Hello and welcome to GB News with me, Darren Grimes from ARC Conference. Now, I'm delighted to be joined by Jason Kenney, most recently the former Premier of Alberta. Now, Jason, thank you very much for your time today.
Great to be here, Darren.
Now, I was just complaining about how cold it is up north, but you rightly put me in my place and told me that actually, Darren, where I'm from, pretty damn cold.
In fact, it was minus 20 in Calgary, Alberta last week with a lot of snow.
Now, I mention the weather not because I'm a boring Brit, but because actually it gets us onto energy security. Now, that is a really, really important talking point here. And I've been speaking to Canadians, Australians, Americans at this very conference who are all saying to me, you guys have gone further on net zero, and now you're seeing the pushback in Britain.
Right.
And they're discussing how actually we are the canary in the coal mine, I guess.
So to speak.
Yeah. Do you worry about that?
Well, I worry a lot about energy poverty, particularly for the developing world, but also people in our developed countries. I'm glad ARC is focusing on these issues because there are billions of people around the world stuck in an energy poverty who are cooking their dinner with dung and wood scraps, which is incredibly high emitting. It's bad not just for CO2 emissions, but NOx and SOx particulate. This is responsible for far more deaths than global warming right now in terms of air quality in the third world. That is a moral and public health crisis that we need to address. And really the only practical way of doing so is abundant, affordable energy, like, for example, natural gas. We could help the developing world move away from thermal coal-fired power and things like dung as a heating source through abundant access to liquefied natural gas. Canada, for example, Alberta, where I come from, we have the third largest oil reserves and the fifth largest natural gas reserves in the world. We're fortunate that democracies like Britain, Canada, and the US can produce this energy. Instead of strangling that and handing a monopoly on global oil and gas markets to some of the world's worst regimes, I think we should responsibly develop that while applying technology to reduce carbon emissions.
And do you worry that actually politicians like, dare I say, Justin Trudeau, would rather, dare I say, appeal more to Twitter than perhaps Canadians at home?
Yeah, there is it's funny you should ask that, because just yesterday, Justin Trudeau, after years of being an evangelist for his punitive carbon taxes, making it more expensive for people to heat their homes and buy their groceries, he yesterday did an about-face, a 180, on home heating oil. Now, it only is used in one part of Canada, but he's admitted effectively that this is incredibly punishing for ordinary working families, and that the whole carbon tax thing is a charade. You know, the United States has led the world in carbon reduction, CO2 emission reductions, without a carbon tax, without punishing consumers. They did it through a common sense conversion from thermal coal power to natural gas power. But when Germany came to us after Putin's invasion of Ukraine to say we need Canadian liquefied natural gas, Justin Trudeau basically told them to go back home. Talk to us in 20 years about possible green hydrogen or things that don't really exist. So he's totally off the mark, unsurprisingly, when it comes to basic literacy around energy and energy affordability.
And we've been talking here a lot about telling our national stories a little bit more. So, for example, in Britain, there's a real Marxist millennial streak running through the younger generations, and I dare say it's replicated in parts of Canada as well. Do you actually worry that the story we are telling these voters is one of denigrating and destroying actually key elements of our history by dismissing us as racist and colonialist and all the rest of it, when actually there is a really beautiful and powerful story to tell about the way in which we have advanced, progressed, and all of these other things?
Yeah. You put your finger on it. I think ARC is great because it brings people together, at least across the global Anglosphere, the English-speaking countries, to talk about common trends. And sadly, Canada is in the vanguard of that cancel culture, that sort of wokeness that is seeking to undermine the institutions, the customs, and the history on which we built a great country. You know, people all across the world dream of being able to immigrate to Canada. We are a welcoming country, but there's a reason they want to come to countries like Britain, Canada and the United States, because we have built prosperous societies based on certain principles like of ordered liberty, like private property rights, like free markets, the rule of law, parliamentary democratic institutions. And these things didn't just spring up from nowhere. They're rooted in a particular history. For us in Canada, that history starts right here with the development of Westminster parliamentary democracy. So to dismiss all of that as the vestiges of some evil imperialism and colonialism is to do ourselves a great disservice. A poll just this week in Canada showed a dramatic decline in a sense of attachment in or pride for Canada amongst our younger people, many of whom I think are being are going through indoctrination in terms of this growing obsession with so-called decolonization, anti-imperialism, which basically means canceling our own history.
So what would your message be then to lawmakers around today, still in office, who actually may well be paying attention to what's going on at this conference?
I think more than ever, pay attention to the educational institutions,
for that indoctrination.
So as Premier, I focus very much on bringing back a common sense school curriculum focused on fundamentals to help young people succeed without political indoctrination, but with a good degree of civic literacy, so young people know how to be good citizens, where our institutions came from, what they represent. But I think this is really urgent, both from K to 12 and in the post-secondary sector. But for grassroots people who are concerned about this, they're often sitting at home watching programs like this, feel powerless. I think, they need to get involved in their local communities. At least in Canada, we have elected local school boards, which are often dominated by the hard left. The teachers' unions and their allies dominate these elections with like 15-20% turnout. Severely normal mums and dads are too busy running their lives to bother to participate. So we need to encourage ordinary, severely normal Canadians and people across the developed world to get involved at the local level and take back these local institutions.
Well, listen, never mind JFK, I want JK, I tell you that much. Jason, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Darren.